workshops, and those went fairly well. Some departments definitely have some challenges. Fortunately, we do not next year. No service level reductions for us, and that's largely because when we had our fees, which will be in place in less than a month now, the new fees, what we did was we removed the general fund subsidy from those fees, and which is consistent with policy, and that basically freed up some general fund, which we were able to repurpose some of it. So even though we were given an overall reduction in what we were expecting, would have expected in general fund, because we were able to repurpose a little bit of what had previously been a subsidy in the permitting, we covered our what would have otherwise been a shortfall. And then next year we will see what we will see. It's all a model, and so we'll have to see how it really plays out. So we'll be monitoring next year to see how things are going and whether or not we need any adjustments. But we're basically fine for the near future. Also, there was a special a special issue, which was the long-range planning work program, and the board decided to move forward on the circulation element update, which is good, long overdue. Those zoning ordinance amendments to implement some housing density bills from 2016. That's not too big of a project. The circulation element update will be a multi-year project. Categorical exclusions for agricultural development in the coastal zone. So this came out of the Gaviota plan, where there were people who wanted certain agricultural practices to be exempt, but if it's not on the list of exemptions in the local coastal plan, you really can't add it as an exemption. So this other process is available. So we're going to be exploring that, and even though it came out of the Gaviota plan, we're going to look at it coastal zone wide. And I'm hopeful that that can go sort of hand in hand with the certification of the Gaviota plan, so that we can basically talk to the Coastal Commission staff and say, well, we really need this, so what can we do? There's an Eastern Goleta Valley census designation that we're working on, so to create an actual unified census tract in the area of the Eastern Goleta Valley Community Plan. And the big one, marijuana regulations, that we're working very, very hard on, working with the ad hoc committee. They had a 2-hour workshop in this room yesterday for the public, and the goal is to get regulations for medical and non-medical marijuana in place as soon as we can, so that when the state starts issuing licenses, we will be able to also have our permitting in place. One wrinkle, sort of end with this, one wrinkle is that the hoop structure project, it's not a new project, it's an ongoing project, but Supervisor Adam found that hoop structures are considered agricultural equipment in the state tax code. And so because of that, he wondered whether that would obviate the need for a zoning permit or a zoning exemption. And we told him that we would look at that and bring it back on June 6th to tell him if they wanted to go in that direction, what additional changes might be necessary in the code, because right now they're considered structures, and structures require permits. So if you're going to call it farm equipment, then there's some additional sort of ramifications for various pieces of our zoning code. And I don't have the details on what that looks like yet, but we'll be going back on June 6th. So that's what I have. And then I'll be going to Sacramento to testify on May 10th at the Assembly Local Government Committee. There's a bill that is being shepherded by Assemblyperson Limon that is in some manner similar but better, I think, to one that we tried and failed a couple of years ago, that would increase our ability to levy fines for large, for commercial, professionally organized commercial events, or things that are significant threats to the public health and safety. Instead of $100, we could go $1,000 given the current language of the bill. I've seen the sausage made before in Sacramento, so no promises, but right now things are looking fairly good with that.
Great. Commissioner Brown?
Yes, thank you. The hearing yesterday on marijuana, I read that Supervisor Lavanino was saying there's going to be some delay in implementing, getting your ordinance. Can you just because I guess it's difficult, or no one's here to
Commissioner Brown, I was busy.
Okay.
So, I mean, there is somebody, if you want to ask the question.
No, that's okay. It's fine, thank you.
You're
Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think I can answer at least part of the question. So we expect the state regulations and licenses to be available in January. And I believe that our schedule, our very aggressive schedule, has us at the Board of Supervisors sometime in February. So there will be a lag in the inland area, and then there's a further delay in the coastal zone because we have to go through coastal commission certification. So I imagine that was probably what was discussed.
Any other questions of Dr. Russell? Certainly a broad presentation and lots of work behind every issue. So good luck in Sacramento.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, that completes the administrative agenda, and we next will move to Rancho La Laguna. But before we read it into the record, let's take a 5-minute transition break, and we'll be ready to go. We are back on the record now for the first of our public hearings today on Rancho La Laguna. And Mr. Villalobos, when you have a chance, would you read that into the record for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The following is a hearing on the request of Susan Petrovich, agent attorney for Rancho La Laguna LLC and La Laguna Ranch Company LLC, owners to consider cases number 06TRM2 and 16CUP30 applications filed on July 25th, 2006 and December 20th, 2016, and to certify the environmental impact report, case number 16EIR1, pursuant to the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Very good. Do we have any ex parte communications to declare before we start? Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. As I said at our first hearing, I did a site visit with the applicant, and I got a phone call yesterday from Brian Troutwine on the project.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes, thank you. I also did a site visit prior to the January meeting, and I did get a phone call yesterday, but I just got a message from Mr. Troutwine, and I did not get to speak to him. Thank you.
Commissioner Franny, anything new?
Nothing new. Site visit with Commissioner Brooks way back when, but nothing since then.
Okay, thank you. And anything to declare, Commissioner Blau?
No, sir. I spent most of my time in bed this last 2 weeks.
Okay. I did have a chance, due to the continuance, to have a site visit with Susan Petrovich and Ms. Beltranena. Very enjoyable experience. I also had a telephone call from who was that? It was former planning commissioner Carla Frisk. That was it. She'll kill me for misremembering her name. Yesterday, and we spoke briefly about the project. Okay, we're ready for you, Ms. Edie. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The Rancho La Laguna project was last reviewed by your commission on January 25th, where it was continued to today's date. And in this presentation, I'm going to briefly go over the project description, and then I'm going to be presenting the additional information that your commission requested at the last hearing. Before I begin my presentation, I'd just like to mention that Chris Burzbach is here again from Rincon Consultants, and he's here to answer any questions that you have regarding the environmental impact report. So just to review, the project site is located approximately 7.5 miles northeast of Los Alamos at the intersection of Alisos Canyon Road and Foxen Canyon Road. The site is located in an agricultural area, and it's utilized for cattle grazing, agricultural cultivation, and some low-intensity residential development. The proposed project includes a tract map to subdivide the existing 2,900-acre project site into 13 lots, ranging in size from 160 to 605 acres in size. Each lot would contain a residential development envelope, or RDE, in which all future residential development would be required to be located. A conditional use permit for a state small water system for domestic services is also proposed for the project. And this system would contain a maximum of 14 connections to serve the new development within the RDEs. The proposed project is compatible with the Ag 2 100 zone district, as all parcels would exceed the 100-acre minimum parcel size that's required for that zone district. At the January 25th hearing, the commission requested staff to return with additional information regarding the permitting requirements associated with abandoned oil and gas wells that are located on the site, the EIR's analysis of the reduced lots alternative, ag viability and native grasslands, as well as information regarding the on-site agricultural operation and the potential to install vineyards on the site on steeper slopes. The commission also requested staff to return with examples of similar projects reviewed by the county, some additional graphics depicting the proposed project site and surrounding lots, as well as the revisions to the findings and conditions of approval. There are 5 plugged and abandoned oil wells that are located on the project site, and they're shown on this slide with stars. These wells are located outside of the RDEs and are a minimum of 100 feet away from the proposed access roads and utility line locations. The county's petroleum code specifies that no building shall be erected within 200 feet of any well or tank, and so any future development on the site would be required to comply with that standard. Records obtained from the Ag Commissioner's Office indicate that in 2016, crops were grown on approximately 563 acres of the project site. Vegetables are grown on the site during the warmer months of the year, and hay is grown during the winter months. There are no vineyards that are located on the project site, but future property owners could elect to install vineyards. And vineyards can be installed on a range of slopes. However, installing vineyards on steeper slopes can present issues regarding maintenance as well as erosion. And so typically, they're installed typically on less than about 30% slopes. According to the EIR, all 13 lots would be agriculturally viable since they were each assigned 60 or more points using the weighted point system included in the county's thresholds and guidelines manual. Staff is unaware of any ag viability studies that have been conducted on adjacent lots. The reduced lots alternative would subdivide the project site into 8 lots rather than 13 lots. While this alternative would reduce the area required for access road, utility, and RDE improvements, all of the mitigation measures that are required for the proposed project would continue to apply to the reduced lots alternative because the resources on the site may still be present with the reduced lots alternative. There are no Class 1 impacts that have been identified with the proposed project to eliminate, and the reduced lots alternative would not change any of the identified Class 2 impacts to Class 3 impacts. As a result, staff is not recommending this alternative in lieu of the proposed project. The EIR discloses that the project would result in impacts to 1.2 acres of native grasslands within the RDEs. The EIR was revised to clarify that all patches of needlegrass within the RDEs were evaluated for percent cover of species and extent of grassland. All areas meeting County of Santa Barbara standards for native grasslands within the RDEs were identified and mapped as native grasslands. In order to mitigate for any impacts to native grasslands, mitigation measure B1A requires pre-construction surveys for special status plants, and measure B2A requires a sensitive plant communities restoration plan in the event that impacts to sensitive plant communities cannot be avoided. Staff identified 2 similar projects to the proposed project, which have been reviewed by the county. Both of these projects propose to subdivide large agriculturally zoned parcels within the rural area of the county. However, both of these subdivisions did propose a larger number of smaller lots than what is being proposed with the Rancho La Laguna tract map. The Mission Oaks Ranch project site is located approximately 5 miles south of the intersection of Highway 154 and Highway 101. And the site is north of the Bobcat Springs existing developed rural neighborhood. The tract map for this project proposed to subdivide 3,800 acres under Williamson Act, zoned Ag 2100, into 31 lots ranging in size from 101 to 244 acres in size. This project was denied by the Board of Supervisors in 1995. The board's findings for denial state that the project would violate the Williamson Act and result in lots which would not be agriculturally viable, and that the project would be growth-inducing and it would result in a cumulative loss to cattle operations in the county. The primary use, agricultural use on this particular site is cattle grazing. They, at that time, did not have any agricultural cultivation on the site. The Rancho Saguaro project site is located in eastern San Ynez Valley at the intersection of Happy Canyon Road and Baseline Avenue. This tract map was approved by the Planning Commission in 1985, and it subdivided a 3,423 acre lot, zoned Ag 2100, into 30 lots, ranging in size from 100 to 171 acres. This graphic shows the proposed Rancho La Laguna tract map in relation to the surrounding lot sizes. Lots that are in beige are lots that are 600 acres and over in size. And then the lots that are in red are 160 acres or less. And then the lots that are green range from 160 acres to 300 acres, and the lots in blue are 300 to 600 acres. And so this slide applies the same colors to the project site so that you can see the lots on the eastern side. The largest lot with this tract is on the eastern side, and it is over 600 acres, and it's fairly consistent with what's north and south of the site. And then the lots towards the center are, blue and green, so they range from 160 up to 600 acres, and are fairly consistent with lots to the north and south of the site. The proposed revisions to the findings and conditions correct minor typographical errors and provide additional information regarding water and sanitary system improvements, as well as permit requirements for future development. The conditions incorporate changes discussed at the previous hearing regarding lighting, biological resources, and Board of Architectural Review. The project description also includes an option to install single parcel or multi-parcel water systems, utilizing private water wells on individual lots for future domestic uses. And there was an additional limitation added to the project description that limits future development within the RDEs that exceed 5 acres to an area of 5 acres. Some of the RDEs are less than 5 acres, and so this wouldn't apply to those. The proposed project is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Adequate services such as access, water, and sanitary services, as well as police and fire protection, are available to serve the new lots. The project has been designed and conditioned to minimize grading activities to the maximum extent feasible, protect visual resources through the use of dark sky lighting, design review of future structures by the VAR when required, landscaping plans which use native, drought-tolerant vegetation, as well as conditions addressing cultural resources. The project is also consistent with the agricultural element goals and policies, as the project would not significantly impair the long-term agricultural suitability and productivity of the site. Staff recommends that your commission make the required findings for approval of the project, including CEQA findings, certify the EIR included as attachment C to the staff memo and as modified by the EIR revision letter dated March 20th, 2017, and approve the project subject to the conditions of approval included in attachments B.1 and B.2 of the staff memorandum dated March 9th, 2017. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edie. Any initial questions from commissioners? Commissioner Brown? Commissioner Brooks has a question.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Edie, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your help during the past week as I made several calls and you gave me more information. Can you define for me or explain to me the difference between ag zoning and ag commercial? I see AC on some of the maps, and is there a difference? And what is the actual zoning of the existing parcels, the one parcel that we're looking at now, Rancho La Laguna? Is it ag commercial versus ag? And if there is a difference?
Chair Cooney and Commissioner Brooks, the land use designation of the site is AC, which is agricultural commercial, and then the zone district is Ag 2 100, which limits parcels to 100 acres in size or larger.
And would you explain to me, AC, can you give me a little bit more definition of that?
Chair Cooney and Commissioner Brooks, AC, I mean, it's an agricultural commercial, so I don't have the definition right in front of me. I think if you'd like, I can pull that from the
Okay.
land use code and read
Sometime
it.
during
Okay.
yeah, the morning would be good. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes, thank you. I did look up that on the AC designation, and it wasn't real clear to me what the purpose of that was. So perhaps when you come back, you can provide some information about why lands have that designation, or the significance of it, I guess. Thank you.
Chair Cooney and Commissioner Brown, yes, we're looking it up right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Brooks again.
Yes. Another question was, do you have any idea on how much of the acreage is used for, active grazing right now? I think your report said it was 563 acres in crops, but of the 4,000 plus acres of the parcel, do you have any idea what the grazing area is?
Commissioner Brooks, through the chair, I would like to actually ask the applicant, because he is here, and I think he can give the best answer for that.
Still going?
Well, I just want to say that while they're looking up this information, back to ex parte, I also had a brief phone conversation with Ms. Carla Frisk.
Okay.
And I did, and then plus my usual with staff.
But I think we'll move on and we'll get the answer to the question. So are you done with your other questions? Okay, great. So at an appropriate time, Ms. Edie, we'll come back with the information about the AC designation. So with no further questions from commissioners, we will turn to the applicant. And we have Ms. Petrovich. Good morning. Would you indicate to us at the outset what you anticipate in terms of time for your presentation?
I think about 15 minutes for me, and then about 5 for Tish, maybe less for Tish. And
Okay.
we both put in speaker slips. But I'd like to go first, and she'd like to go second.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Susan Petrovich, representative of the applicant. I'm not the applicant, I wish, but I'm not. Excuse me while I get my equipment set up here. Okay. So here we are with our second hearing, and I thought I would quickly run through why I believe you should be approving this project. First of all, it was the brainchild of the owners, so that they could create future home sites for them and their family members. These are 3 extended families with currently 3 generations alive and kicking and looking at the future. But they looked at it from the standpoint of how can we do this in a way that preserves the ranch. All resources were studied, impacts were avoided or mitigated. The RDEs were very carefully cited. It took a long time to cite these and to size them in a way that would give maximum flexibility within the building envelope to move things, within the RDE to move things around, but without compromising any sensitive resources and not compromising the agriculture. I did want to emphasize that the ultimate building envelopes are going to be a maximum of 2 acres on lots 9 to 13 and 5 acres on lots 1 through 8. But on lots 1 through 8, 2 of these are already substantially smaller than that. One's 2.7 and one's 3.6. So as you can see, the EIR took the larger figures of what the RDEs were now, but the building envelopes, we've agreed, will be smaller. It's just that it gives you more flexibility. And you probably already know this, but needlegrass likes to move around. So it'll surprise you in the spring, and then it'll go somewhere else. So it's good to have flexibility. And then we have a project description that's very detailed and conditions, lots of conditions that will ensure enforcement of avoidance and mitigation of impacts. And I'll talk about that a wee bit more later. I do want to emphasize that it meets the comprehensive plan and the zoning requirements. It provides parcel layouts that promote viable agriculture on every lot. The owners have offered a condition that they and their successors will not oppose downzoning of lots 9 through 13 to A2 320 when the county gets around to that, which eventually it will. And then, as I said, they've also committed to limiting the building site size. As Dana showed you so eloquently, the proposed parcel size do fit with the area. So there's just no rational basis for not approving this project. No neighbor opposes it. The immediate neighbors, as you could see by the letters, Dittmer and Tognazzini support it. The Tognazzini's ranch is just to the west, adjacent, abutting this property. I'm going to skip the next slide because Dana did such a good job. You asked last time about the private wells, our concept of allowing for private wells rather than building this huge shared domestic system, which might ultimately at Branch build up be a good idea, you know, because then you're essentially sharing resources. But we anticipate that these lots will be built out over a long period of time, and so that's why we were asking to be able to do that. And so just for your information, I went through, I had the ranch manager map for me where these wells are, and the only ones that don't have existing wells are large parcels, the smallest of which is 206 acres, and then they go up to 597 acres. So there's ample room on those large parcels to find suitable well sites. Creeks run through the ranch, recharging the groundwater. So it is a water-rich environment rather than, and in contrast to poor little Mission Oaks Ranch that that Dana was talking about earlier, that didn't even have an on-site well. Its wells were both going to be off-site. And it does provide some options for the most economical water supply for domestic uses. In any event, with private well or with a shared system, there's not going to be a change in the total domestic use. It just allows for less earth disturbance, frankly, if you each have an individual well. So that is why we've made this request that the shared system also be allowed in addition to the individual wells, and that's now in the project description and conditions. Just if you're interested, the well sites there's one here, about here, another one way up here in the tip of this parcel, another one down here. They all pretty much run right along Fox and Canyon Road because that's, of course, where the intensified agriculture is, and there's been the need for irrigation wells. But then there's another one running up here, about here, and then a couple in here. So there are wells scattered around, and there are two huge producers that are the primary source of the water. Some of these aren't even being used right now because the wells are so productive, the two that they're using. You also asked about Sigma and what impact it would have on this property. And as I showed you last time, only part of the ranch is in the San Antonio Basin. The remaining portion is either in the White area or in the San Ynez, one of the San Ynez basins. No safe yield study's ever been done in this basin, so we don't know whether it's overdrafted. There's no evidence that it's overdrafted. The county's shown it as an overdrafted basin, but without any real evidence of that. And so as a result, DWR, or the state, has classified as medium priority. However, because of medium priority, it must have a plan, a groundwater sustainability plan. USGS for some years has been doing a study. It's only partially done, so we still don't even have anything definitive. But there is a GSA, a groundwater sustainability agency, being formed. So we will not have the state coming and joining us to run the basin, but at great expense, I might add. And for this basin, it must have a plan by 2022. So, and that's plenty of time to finish the study and have a plan. So, yes, this property, like every other property, will be affected by Sigma, and whatever the rules are will be applied to this property. That will certainly not affect domestic users. We're really talking about ag land here with so much irrigation for agriculture that domestic water just kind of is a drop in the bucket, if you'll pardon the pun. So the GSP will have to meet state requirements, which of course is a very strong incentive to the locals who are most affected to get the job done and to get it in a way, get it done right so that the state approves the plan, because if the state doesn't, then they come in. These families plan to retain the land in agriculture, and this has been a successful agricultural operation for them, and at one time it was for the prior owners. I think it's ridiculous to suggest that they will fallow this land. It's incredibly productive for both cattle grazing, and boy, you saw, well, when you guys were out, it was pretty early. You ought to see how high the grass and the hay is this year. It warms the heart to see the end, I hope, what is the end of the drought. So these folks are doing what best ensures long-term agriculture. They're providing for multiple generations to stay on site. And as you know, you can't require someone to stay in agriculture. They have to want to stay in agriculture. It's hard work, and Commissioner Farini knows better than anybody. It's hard work, thankless work, long hours, and you have to love it, and you have to love the land. And that's what the way these families feel about it. And they want their children to have a chance to live that experience. And providing a home for the younger generation is certainly even more insurance than an ag conservation easement, because all ag conservation easement says you can't use it for anything else. It doesn't say you shall farm. The row crop areas have been leased to farmers with specialty crops, and they'll continue to be leased. Those are lucrative growing crops. And then the cattle grazing areas comprise the larger parcels that will be standalone grazing enterprises, so that each parcel is in viable ag. And just to quickly answer your question about, well, if it's going to be in cropland for 400 to 500 acres, the answer, what happens to the rest of it, or how much of it is grazing? The rest of it is grazing. It's being grazed now, and the whole property is being grazed. Some of it's got better grazing land than others, but you know, it's all being grazed. And one of the things they did was cross-fence this property to make sure that they could rotate the cattle, which is the most efficient way to graze. So a wise land division meets the following agricultural needs for viability. And this is something actually that I wrote up for a completely other purpose, but I came across it the other day. Farmers and ranchers in bad times have to go borrow money. That's the bottom line. So, and that can be true just to improve your operation, to make it more lucrative, if you can call farming lucrative. Using individual parcels, you have the ability not to have to bet the whole farm. You don't have to put a loan against your whole farm. So that allows you to provide one parcel, say, as collateral for an individual loan, rather than your whole parcel. It also allows, as you know, homes for individual family members. And that has meaning because it's just too easy for relatives to sell off the farm if they don't, or the ranch if they don't live on it. And then it does meet the need to pay estate taxes, whether you're borrowing money or whether you have to sell a parcel in order to keep the rest. At least it allows you to stay in farming and allows you to keep the property. And that's just the sad reality of farming and ranching. You don't start rich and you don't die rich. Farming and ranching ideally is a family enterprise, and I thought that letter from one of the other ranchers and farmers in this area was particularly compelling. Having your grandchildren live on the ranch teaches them why they want to keep the ranch, why they want to stay on the ranch and continue to farm and ranch. Having the successive generations living there, watching their parents work, and then growing up helping them work the land is the way that we keep our land viable. And then I already mentioned the land division. I would ask you not to be influenced by the shotgun emails that you received over the last few days. I mean, many of these were one line or just one phrase. And when I went on the EDC and SBCAN websites, and the wording in those all came straight from those websites. It was clear to me that nobody understood this project who wrote those letters. None are project neighbors. 3 from UCSB, 1 list of 10 names, 1 email address. The others are from Goleta and North County and other states and counties. But many thought it was in the San Ynez Valley, which it is not. Only a tiny sliver. This is even in the 3rd district. So this is Los Alamos. This is Fox and Canyon. This is not San Ynez Valley. But all this terminology that you saw in their letters, that came straight, or their emails, that came straight off the website. Looked like Linda Kropp wrote it because that's where I got it. It was on originally and in the alerts. The fact that these folks had such inflammatory language about this project, I think was a dead giveaway that they didn't understand it, and they probably weren't even familiar with the land. Again, this is just some of the wording, but using terms like housing development of this scope and nature is simply too destructive, 13 houses, or that the project doesn't include vineyards. They use the term unchecked expansion of vineyards. And that agriculture and wildlife will be gone forever, and we're going to need low-income housing, but not here. Thoughtless development, unchecked population growth. I mean, come on. And then EDC. What they don't understand when they claim that the agricultural future of this ranch is at stake is that when Chip and Chuck bought this property, it was coming out of an estate, and therefore it had been neglected. They poured a fortune into improving its agricultural potential. If they were just going to subdivide it, they certainly wouldn't have gone to all the effort to bring the grazing back, make sure it was cross-fenced so you could get the maximum rotation, and drill new wells, build new storage tanks, build a completely new irrigation system to serve the more intensive agriculture. And I did want to clarify that they did not withdraw from the Ag Preserve program. The prior owner's estate did that because they had more than one ranch under the same Ag Preserve contract, and they had to non-renew in order to sell that. And unlike Mission Oaks, every one of these proposed parcels will qualify for the Ag Preserve program if the ultimate owners want to do that, and of course the owners are committing that the larger parcels they will be putting in to the Ag Preserve program as part of a condition on the project. In the end, I want to emphasize that unlike Mission Oaks, APAC found the project consistent with the county's uniform rules for Ag Preserve. This project maximized, unlike Mission Oaks, and I asked that this be passed out. I gave it to you last time, so it's not new information. But it was this matrix I did last time that showed you the differences between Mission Oaks and Rancho La Laguna, and probably the thing they have most in common is they're both about 4,000 acres. That's about the only thing I could find out, because Mission Oaks, of course, was trying to maximize the return for developer and his investors. This project has viable on-site domestic and agricultural water supplies, plus each parcel easily can have an individual water well. And the RDEs avoid conflict with bio, ag, and cultural and aesthetic impacts, which really are the key issues that would apply here. Every one of those RDE was located after identifying its impact on all of those resources and either tweaking it, moving it, or reducing it in size in order to make sure that none of those were impacted. The access roads and infrastructure have been analyzed, and the biological surveys have been continuous from prior to application through the EIR. And I did want to just take a second to talk about that, because there was a question last time about, was it too broad? Were they too broad? How did they address the bio issues? How could we ensure that they would continue to address the bio issues? Some of those may seem outdated, but of course, plants don't move quickly, except native grasses. They have a way of moving around. But when you have a complete project, it takes time to process. As you can see, the original application here was submitted in 2006. And you could keep every year doing updated surveys, but it's not going to do the trick for addressing this situation, because right up through the map recordation, things are going to be changing somewhat. Species come and go, particularly birds come and go. And even though you may have habitat, it doesn't mean that they're really there. The ranch was supposedly had least vireo habitat. Well, we've done protocol surveys, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife said, okay, you don't have vireos. They just don't come to this property. It's not really perfect. It has habitat, but it's just not enough to attract them. That's the kind of thing that happens. And so these conditions that the staff has worked so hard on, and so has Rincon, and so has Rosie Thompson, were crafted to have the conditions meet the conditions, conditions apply when you want them to apply, and that is when someone is proposing earth movement, whether to build a house or to improve the roads. And that is how these conditions are worded. They evolve, they follow the project. No matter how many years, decades it takes to build out, they will still apply. And that is called management. That is responding to change. And you don't see that very often in project conditions, which we have 64 of. And I'm proud to say that they were vetted not just by county staff and Rincon, by Rosie Thompson, who is an amazing biologist. And I had never asked her, just tell me what the applicant wants to hear. She takes a look at them and she crafts them to make sure they meet the need. And then, I know, I'm sorry, I'm
Ms.
running out of time.
Petrovich, yeah, if you
Okay.
want to save time for Ms. Beltranena, then you need to wrap up.
Yeah, okay. Let me just, I did want to speak quickly to vineyards. There's no proposal for vineyards, but Mesa Vineyard Management did do a study of this project, and they were looking at, or this site, they were looking at not planting on slopes over 30% and not replacing the row crop lands, and still they came up with 435 acres of potential land that is now pasture, not prime land. So yes, it could be used for that. That is not being proposed. So unless you have any questions, I will just wrap up with that. Thank you.
I do have one. What kind of development can occur outside of the building envelopes?
Ag barns, ag stables if they're true ag, if they're not personal stables, if they're breeding horses for sale or well, that's pretty much if you're breeding horses for sale. And farm worker housing can happen outside. Those are the only things that come to mind for me.
But buildings associated...
Oh, the water well, I'm sorry, the water well.
Okay. I was thinking
Any water well.
of development that might impact passersby or the rest of the world.
Well, we've got the requirement that the BAR approves structures. Now, there's smaller ag structures that are exempt from that, but that's true everywhere in the county. So nothing special is going to happen for this property. But you bring to mind this question of clustering the houses on lots 3 and 4. That would have been highly visible. I think that's a big mistake. And that, of course, destroys your RDEs. I don't know what you're going to do if you clustered. But that was the whole purpose of the RD, is to make sure that the owner's personal stuff, whatever they want to build, is kept confined to the building site now, which is smaller than the RDE. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. We have another project today that talks about ag structures being built within a 6-acre property, and so a lot of those barns and stables could be built within that 5-acre envelope, but they don't have to be, is what you're saying.
Well, they would have to be if they're for the owner's personal use. You see what I'm saying? And maybe I should bring it more down to the ag preserve parcels, because the larger ones are the ones where there will be the most potential for ag structures. Under the Williamson Act, because those will be in Williamson Act, you get 2 acres for your personal use. So you can't say, oh, this stable's for ag use. You have to have some ag purpose. Now, you saw out there that they didn't have stables, but they had pens for the horses that are used in the ag operation, in the ranching, and you still need horses to do this job. So you could have a stable or a place you kept those horses that were outside the building envelope, but you'll also see people have really, really nice stables you might want to live in. Those would have to fit within this building envelope, because those are not for ag use.
Okay.
Those are for personal use.
I think the use is a tough issue we could talk a long time about, so let's say that.
Well, APAC talks a long time for you. They believe me, they don't let them slip by. They know what's going on, so they're the ones who monitor this for you. But not that you don't want to, but they're very suspicious of anything that it doesn't appear to be really ag.
Understand. Any other questions for Ms. Petrovich? Okay,
Thank you.
Ms. Beltran-Inez is next.
Chair, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank your staff and the many generations of your staff that have worked with us on this project. And it was a pleasure driving each and every one of you around this property. Just driving you around one of our smaller lots, Lot 1, with our 75 acres of tomatillos going in, I think you got an idea of how big these lots are. I want to talk a little bit about this partnership and a proven commodity that you have here, because a lot of these 3,900 acre parcels, you either see them with the 39 parcels, the cookie cutter, or you see them sold to large vineyard properties that can easily, without even permits, go in and put 1,000 acres in there right away. They're very popular with the larger companies. However, they bought this property, and I've been with them 14 years, and it was fallow during the sale, but boy, they brought it back in a few years, and what they've done out there is amazing. And I know you've heard a lot about Chip Hanley and his proven record and history in the cattle ranching community that we live in. And when I met him, he didn't have grandchildren. Now he has. The next generation has arrived. They're 2, 4, 6, and 8, and he takes them out there and gets them on the horses. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a multi-generational plan to save agriculture. You heard from Stephanie last time we were here. You look at her and you wouldn't know that in 2009, she won the world championship of cutting horse. World championship. This woman sorts cattle like I sort laundry. She can herd cattle on a horse like nobody's business. World champion. If that isn't a proven commitment to the cattle ranches along the back, I don't know what is. I know you're used to your standard subdivisions where you take a lot 10 and you divide it into 2 or 3 parcels in a parcel map, and I know you've done that a lot. I have a notebook full of them. What's the precedent here? The precedent is that everybody used to use the cookie cutter, the 100-acre cookie cutter. You have never had a map proposing so many huge ranches. They're huge. They're viable. Orange Sage loved it out there. Our back 5 cattle ranches are beautiful green velvet. And when I see the alternative that merges Lot 10, a cattle ranching lot, with a row crop lot in front of it, those are 2 different kinds of farming. You're doing a disservice to those lots. Merging them is not the answer. About the visual impact, well, if you drive down the front of this parcel, you can see lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. At 45 miles an hour, it takes you 3 minutes to drive just that frontage. Between the dense eucalyptus trees, the riparian habitat that is in between you and the building envelopes, you might get a glimpse of 1, 2, and 3, a rooftop. Hopefully not if you're driving. Maybe your passenger will. But, you know, the visual impacts of this, what you're going to see is beautiful row crops like you do today and like you have for 14 years. And if that isn't a proven commodity, what they have done with this ranch to take it from fallow to 560 acres and all that they've done, we've offered to limit the RDs to 5 acres, but, you know, they've been paying their full taxes on lots, all these lots, you know, for a long time since it was non-renewed and they purchased it. And, you know, don't look down on the fact that they would rather pay their full taxes for lots 1 through 8. Maybe you can put it towards the retirement system. But Williamson Act is not great for these high-value crops and these smaller parcels like them. It is a good program for lots 9 through 13. We will enroll them in that. Williamson Act government programs do not preserve agriculture. Families dedicated to agriculture preserve it. This is a multi-generational plan, as I said. And when they retire to the ranch, which is getting close now because it's been so long, you know, they'll build their couple of retirement homes there and hopefully be able to, you know, drill small wells, use existing water right now because that's really what they want to do. They want to get out there, retire. They want to build up the cow-cattle operation. How many applicants for a subdivision have said that to you? And they want to care for this ranch so that when their children and Chip's grandchildren and their grandchildren who aren't here yet can take over. But right now, their children are building their careers. They want to preserve this, and each child that way will be able to come out there and have a ranch. But right now, for example, the youngest daughter, she's a midwife. She's birthing babies. She's building a career. So these people deserve a chance because leaving these parcels huge, we all know who's going to buy them and where they'll end up. And this is a proven commodity. These people love this land. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beltranena. Our next speaker is Chip Hanley, followed by Charles Rovin.
So
Thank you.
can
My
we-
name is Chip Hanley, one of the owners. I don't think I have a lot to add to what we're saying. If the question about how many acres of pasture is around 3,300 acres in pasture. I think there's about 6 different pastures that we rotate the cattle through. We're anxiously awaiting approval of this project so we can get on with our life. So if there's any, you know, you've all heard about my grandkids are 6th generation of the Solvang, so I don't think we need to get into that, but we're here to watch you guys approve a project, so thank you. And I'm Mr. Blau, I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Chip. Good seeing you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley. Mr. Rovin. Renee Condi is next.
Well, thank you for having me up here. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said, with more detail and probably more eloquence than I'm going to be able to muster. But I think it's important to let you hear from one of the owners of the property who, together with Chip and my wife, did find that peace and buy that peace. And as Tish has said, 13, 14 years ago, we did buy it out of the estate, and it had gone fallow. And it's with great pride that we have 567 acres of row crops there. And it's with great pride that we have run cattle on that property since we've owned it. And it's with great pride that we would want to keep it ag, which is why when we started with Tish and Susan over 10 years ago now, we continued to work with them and with you people to continually assess what you were telling us about how to handle this treasure. And so we believe that we've done it in such a way to preserve the ag. It's got great scores. To preserve its viability, but to actually put it in a place where it can continue and thrive, hopefully for multi-generations of my family and Chip's. But whoever ends up owning it will have to and will have the same passion for it because it's built into the plan. And that was very, very important to us. So I'm sure you all have pride in things that matter to you. So just so you know, it is hurtful to read letters from people who don't even know where the property is, who think it's in one place when it's in another, who've never seen it, who don't know what we're doing. So I hope you're not swayed by that. I hope you are swayed by the facts that we presented today and the history of what we've done with the property and our commitment to continue with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roven. Ms. Condi, and then Alicia Rosler.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Renee Condit. I live in Solvang. I've been, I'm blessed to just have 2 brand new grandbabies, 4 months old. They are the 6th generation of our family to live in the Santa Ynez Valley. I was just hearing somebody say that, oh, this project's not in the Santa Ynez Valley. To us, it kind of is. I mean, I couldn't tell you the exact line where the Santa Ynez Valley starts and stops. We had one ranch up on Dominion, and we called that the Santa Ynez Valley, and I guess technically it's not. Most of the years, all growing up, I mean, my grandfather and my father, we farmed downtown Solvang in Otay. So I get it. I mean, you hear all these people that are, change is horrible, change is bad. Look around. I mean, seriously, we've been here I'm 59. I've been here forever. And very fortunate my grandkids are going to get to experience, this area. We were never fortunate enough to own the land, but by golly, we leased it, and we always had 100 to 400 acre ranches all over. We ran a cow-calf operation, and what I hear, what people think, and what I hear too is, oh, the people that own that. I'd like you all to think for a minute about these people that lease it, that live the land, that enjoy the land, and without these properties, I'm totally in favor of this. The 100 and 400 and 500 acre pieces, 200 acre, they're hard to find, and my son and son-in-law, they're starting their own cattle company. They're going to lease land, have a cow-calf operation. My little grandkids are going to be out there on their ponies helping gather the cattle, and we have brandings. And I want to share with you, just at the one place that we had, just the one ranch, I won't bore you with all the others, but this is typical. The kids that came down that would help on the ranch We had single mothers that would send their boys down because there was no man in the household and they wanted their sons to be men. And they'd come down and work on the ranch on the weekends and during the summer with my dad, my husband, my son, they're friends of his. And one of them now that learned how to drive tractor on our ranch and drive the Jeep. Of course, he was probably 9 or 10 when he started driving, which is another fun thing for all these kids to get to experience that we got to learn. He's now the head mechanic for Granite. He works on all their big dozers and tractors. Another kid that was down there a lot, matter of fact, he didn't go home 3 different summers running. He lived at our house pretty much the time, so he could spend time at the ranch. He now is a Santa Barbara sheriff and one of the very valued members of the SWAT team. I credit his BB gun practice and all the paintball gun fights out just running wild. These kids could get out there and run wild on property like this. You can't do that in town. You can't have that kind of life. We farmed 3 acres of watermelons just so the school kids, they came down class by class, would pick a watermelon, take it back to the big picnic table. My dad would come by with a machete, wham, slam it in half. They ate it with their hands, and then they got to take a whole one home. So I still have kids to this day, and they're in their 30s now, that stop me in the market and are like, Mrs. Condit, you know, that was one of the best memories I have of my life. You know, the same day they were taking hay rides on a team of Belgians because they'd learned, my dad, get them up there, my husband, here's how you drive them. These are priceless memories that just don't happen anymore. And these people that, you know, and God bless them, they love living on their acre place that has a Rancho Los Da-da-da sign on a 1 acre place that cracks me up, but maybe that's not nice. They don't get it. You got to have acreage to do this, and 100 to 500 acres is great. Your friends come, your family come. You have brandings. These are memories that you create with the community, and it's what makes such a wonderful community. If you don't have it, you don't build that, and you don't have that sense of community, and you don't have a neighbor that you're that close to. So, anyways, I'll wrap it up. It's that important to everybody and your grandkids and the future drivers. Thank you.
It was spellbinding, your storytelling. I paid no attention to the red lines. Ms. Russler, where's Alicia? Right here. And our last speaker slip after Alicia is Mark Chatillo.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Alicia Rossler from the Environmental Defense Center, and I'm here today testifying on behalf of our clients SBCAN and Salinas Valley Alliance. Today I'll briefly highlight just a few points addressed in our letters the EDC submitted on January 23rd and March 27th. So I'm going to address 2 major points. 1, why the EIR cannot be certified, and 2, why the project must be denied because it violates the county's comprehensive plan. First, the EIR cannot be certified based on 3 primary reasons. 1, it does not contain complete information about the development potential or environmental setting, and thus the impact analysis is inadequate. 2, the EIR fails to fully analyze and disclose the project's land use impacts and inconsistencies with the county's comprehensive plan. And 3, the EIR constrains the range of alternatives by relying on an unduly narrow objective of subdividing the ranch into 13 lots. The findings unlawfully find other alternatives, which would reduce or avoid impacts, to be infeasible because they do not meet this narrow objective. The project must be denied because it violates the county's comprehensive plan. First, the project violates the county's ag commercial land use designation. The primary purpose of this designation is to continue commercial ag production. 2, the fact that the owners and applicants let the Williamson Act contract expire and refuse to require continued combined ag is evidence the project is inconsistent with AC land use designation. The EIR acknowledges that some of the parcels may become fallow, but fails to find this impact to be significant or inconsistent with the ag commercial designation for the ranch. 3, the project is also inconsistent with policies in the county's agricultural element that require continued and enhanced agriculture. And lastly, the project is inconsistent with the county's comprehensive plan policies protecting water quality, oak woodlands, native grasslands, and habitat for rare species. While the county cannot force people to farm, it does, through its general plan, prevent people from purchasing land designated for ag and subdividing it to build estates in a manner that threatens ag viability. Approval of the Rancho La Laguna subdivision will establish a precedent for subdivisions throughout the Santa Ynez Valley and other county rural areas in direct contravention of the county's comprehensive plan. For these reasons, the commission must deny this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Mr. Chatillo.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I'm Mark Chatillo, and I'm here today on behalf of the Friends of Ballard Canyon, and as well as a number of other groups. I think this project is one that's certainly been on my radar for a number of years, watching it go forward because of its similarity to other projects where we've seen these productive, large agricultural parcels being subdivided up. And I'm afraid it's here we go again. I think your commission wrestled with the Las Varas project a couple of years ago that ultimately was denied by the Board of Supervisors, where we faced a lot of similar kind of comments with respect to the intentions of the landowner to maintain the agricultural viability of the land. But there was actions which didn't indicate that that was indeed the case. Now, I'm not versed in this case, and I think it's hard not to be impressed by the comments of the landowners and some of the other supporters. But when I look, I think it's important to judge these kinds of land use proposals with what is actually done and included within the project description as opposed to what is said to be their intentions. And to me, when a landowner says that we want to keep this land in ag and we want to have this available for intergenerational transfer, one of the critical pieces that I look for to see whether that intention is manifested in a legal obligation is whether there's a conservation easement. It can be an agricultural conservation easement. It can be an easement to protect the important habitat value of the incredible San Antonio Creek Basin. This is one of the most important watersheds biologically in the county. And it's well established that the activities that have happened upstream throughout this basin have had a deleterious effect on the downstream components of the San Antonio Creek wetlands onto Vandenberg Air Force Base. So make no mistake that we're dealing with a very, very significant parcel from a biological perspective within a very important watershed. But when it comes to the issue of agricultural viability and the continuation of agriculture, which I think we all support in this community, it is important that words are matched by deeds, and deeds are reflected within a commitment to a conservation easement, a Williamson Act contract that will ensure that the aspirations that have been stated here actually are manifested in the form of specific commitments. We do have concerns with respect to the consistency with the comprehensive plan and many of the issues that Ms. Rossler raised, and we certainly expect that your commission is going to wrestle with those issues. But we're being asked as a community to go along with the story, and there's been too many instances where we've seen the story didn't match up with what happened down the road. If these are genuinely going to stay in agriculture, productive agriculture, they need to be committed to that purpose through a legally enforceable mechanism. Thank you.
Are there any other public speakers that want to speak on Rancho Laguna? I don't see anybody rise. Ms. Petrovich, would you like 2 minutes to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I won't take long. And I'm glad that Tish mentioned Orange Sage, because you all also asked about the why were the scores different with different ag consultants or the staff who looked at the viability of these parcels. First, and that's because we heap conservatism on top of conservatism, but But you'll notice the scores are all close to each other. And I think the staff described it pretty well last time, or maybe it was Mr. Burzbach, that, well, first of all, Oren Sage, who is certainly a very well respected ag consultant, he made his own call on what the parcels scores would be. And then the staff made their call, and they're also conservative. And then we added Rincon. So they also made their own conservative estimate, if you will, because that's all you can do is a general estimate, a judgment call. So you had three different people look at this, basically three different groups look at this, and they all came up with the conclusion that every one of these parcels will be ag viable. And I don't care what the numbers say, that's what each one of them concluded. The precedent, I thought the map that Dana showed you with the orange and that's the precedent that ship has sailed. There's already been a precedent in this area. This property fits within the neighborhood perfectly. So Mr. Chitillo maybe didn't hear the whole presentation. I don't know. But I think it's interesting that Mr. Chitillo came and tried to sell you on ag conservation easement. People don't give ag conservation easements as part of a land division unless they're developers, because the land doesn't mean anything to them, and they take their tax break when they sell the parcels. For families, they take it after the land has been divided, or maybe it can't be divided at all, because then they can actually get a tax benefit of granting an ag conservation easement. You can't do it as part of a subdivision. It's considered quid pro quo, and it's not, you don't get the tax benefit. But if you do it after the subdivision or the land division, you can take the tax benefit because you're not trading it for the approval of the land division. So all I'm saying is it's fine to stand up here and say, oh, every property should be an ag conservation easement. Mr. Chitillo doesn't own ag land. Mr. Chitillo really doesn't know how it works. And a farmer who would walk away from a tax benefit is crazy. So there probably will be some ag conservation easements, but it'll be each individual owner that makes that decision, and it won't be made today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll come back to staff then. Ms. Edie, listening to all the comments, do you have any responses for the commission?
Chair Cooney, I don't have any additional responses based on the public comment, but I do have the additional information that Commissioner Brooks wanted on the ag commercial designation.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, if
We're
it's
ready.
now. Okay.
This is great.
So this is from the land use element. It's the land use definition for the ag commercial AC designation. It states this category is for commercially farmed, privately owned land located within either rural, inner rural, existing developed rural neighborhoods, or urban areas which meet the following criteria. The first criteria is that the land is subject to a Williamson Act contract, including contracts that have been non-renewed. Or the second item says for parcels that are larger than 40 acres, whether or not currently being used for ag purposes, but are otherwise eligible for Williamson Act contract, and that those can be included if they meet the requirements of the uniform rules, specifically uniform rule number 6. And that was basically the two items that I was going to mention regarding that definition. So.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for Ms. Edie? Did you want to pursue that, Commissioner Brooks?
Well, just the last statement you made. What is uniform rule number 6?
So uniform rule number 6 I believe it relates to both prime and non-prime soils, but I think we're going to need to bring that up to confirm that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Brooks, so Uniform Rule 6 actually has to do with administration of the contracts, and it talks about termination, non-renewal, and other options. It's not clear exactly how that relates to this definition.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier, but Mr. Burzbach also would like to make a statement, I think, to answer a few questions that came up during public comment.
That's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Burzbach.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted, in light of some of the comments that were made that touched on issues raised in the EIR, just to clarify some items in the record regarding the conclusions of the EIR that relate specifically to those comments that have come up, if I may take a couple of minutes to do that.
Sure.
Primarily in light of the comments that were made by the Environmental Defense Center, both in their verbal statements and in a couple of the letter that they've entered into the record dated March 27th, two of the issues raised regarding there being insufficient information in the setting insufficient disclosure of land use impacts. I'm not aware of any additional information that's been entered into the record that contradicts any of the findings in the EIR or suggests that there isn't sufficient information contained therein, so I'm not going to respond further to those. The third item regarding the project objectives being too narrowly focused, there is a project objective that states the number of parcels requested by the applicant. That's one of the applicant's objectives for the project. I just want to note that the EIR doesn't dismiss any alternative on the basis that it doesn't satisfy that objective. In fact, the EIR analyzes an alternative which we saw a little bit more information on, alternative 3, which evaluates at a similar level of detail to the other EIR alternatives a version of the project that involves fewer parcels. It wouldn't satisfy that objective, but the EIR doesn't dismiss it or address it at any lower level of detail on the basis of it not being consistent with that objective. And then just a couple of additional items. There were several points raised that relate to or reference the EIR's discussion regarding fallowing or discontinued agricultural use. I just want to clarify, the EIR, as a result of the analysis that we do, we have to make certain assumptions about what may or may not happen on the land. As commenters noted, future landowners can't be compelled to do anything in particular on their land. They, can only comply with the requirements set forth in the zoning code about what they can or cannot do. So in several cases, the EIR makes conservative assumptions, allowing that it's possible that future landowners or the current landowner may discontinue agricultural use. And specifically when we follow through with the weighted point system, the county's point system for evaluating agricultural viability, we use conservatively lower values that allow for the fact that there are unknown factors. So that's in an effort to provide the most conservative analysis possible in order to draw conclusions that we feel confident in. So there are statements to that effect in the EIR, but it doesn't make any assumptions about what would or would not happen where we felt that would be inappropriately speculative. And then finally, there was one statement in the letter submitted by the Environmental Defense Center that I just wanted to raise. It's on page 3 in the third paragraph of that page. And it makes a statement that includes a quote, if you will, from the draft EIR regarding the conclusions related to potential conflicts between future residential development on the parcels with future agricultural practices, and then states that this conclusion was changed from the draft EIR to the final EIR. I actually was unable to identify that quote in either the draft or final EIR. I'm not sure where it came from, but I just want to clarify that the conclusion drawn by the draft EIR regarding that issue is that the EIR acknowledges that there may be potential conflicts between future residential uses and agricultural uses on the project site, but finds that to be less than significant. And that's explained further in the EIR, but that's not a conclusion that was changed from draft to final. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then if there are any further questions regarding the EIR or its conclusions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burzbach. Any questions regarding the environmental document? Don't see any from commissioners, but thank you. Stick around. We might develop them. Commissioner Farini.
Further question from staff, and it follows up on Commissioner Brooks' question on the AC and then the reading and maybe a little more interpretation here. It talks about commercially farm ground and then subject to Williamson on larger than 40 acres. What's the objective of putting the Williamson language in there combined with AC? Is that a...
Commissioner Farini, through the chair, I believe that including the requirement for Williamson Act was really to ensure long-term agricultural use of the property at the time. And what I did want to mention as well is that both the existing and the proposed lots associated with this project have been determined to be eligible to go back under Williamson Act contract if future property owners elect to do that. They did meet the requirements of size and that's all included in the EIR. It's discussed in the EIR.
So is AC requiring the land be in Williamson Act, or it's just saying that it's fully eligible?
My understanding is that it's eligible.
And so that it's still voluntary to go in or out of Williamson Act?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Petrovich mentioned conditions related to going back into Williamson Act. So is the project requiring them to do it or simply making it possible?
Chair Cooney, I believe the project description states that lots 9 through 13 would go back under Williamson Act contract. It doesn't mention lots 1 through 8, but they are eligible to do that. If, like I said, future property owners wanted to go through that process. So it is a, they do have to go through a process to put the lots under a contract, but the project description does state that they would attempt to do that with lots 9 through 13.
Without any particular time frame?
There is no time frame mentioned, no. Oh, they're saying it's recordation. Excuse me.
Would you check that just to be sure? Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Edie or other staff? Why don't we take a very short break and we'll come back and deliberate. And I would say at 10:02, we'll be back and doing that. We're back on the record on item number 2, which is Rancho La Laguna. And we have closed the public hearing and are now taking the matter up in deliberations. This project uniquely involves 2 of our districts, but much more the 5th. So Commissioner Blau, would you like to lead off?
Sure, that's fine.
We'll need you to really pull that microphone close in order to get enough volume. Thank you.
Chair Cooney?
Yes, perfect.
No, that was me.
Oh, no wonder it was perfect. What are you doing here?
I was testing the mics for you. Chair Cooney, before we enter in deliberation, would you like us to go over that comment that we ended with before break as far as the Williamson Act and the timing for the contracts?
Sure. Staff has more on that, please.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, 2 things. First of all, there was discussion about whether this project would some of the lots would go into Williamson Act contract. And so what's on the overhead projector is some text in bold. I don't know if you can read it, it's a little blurry, but it essentially discusses in the EIR that the applicant was proposing to put several of the lots into or back into Williamson Act contract. So there's discussion within the final EIR about that. The staff is proposing that there's additional language, a new condition that would be added to the project description at the very end, which states the applicant proposes new Williamson Act contracts for 5 of the 13 lots 9 through 13. Prior to map recordation, the applicant shall submit completed applications for Williamson Act contracts on lots 9 through 13. Contracts shall be executed by the applicant within 1 year of map recordation. So we were going to add that, what I just read, into the project description, condition number 1. We discussed that with the applicant during the break, and they agreed to do that, add that language in.
Is that your understanding, Ms. Petrovich?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and although I think we use the word complete applications, not completed, we want it complete. So it's clear that that the applicant will submit a full package application for each of those lots. But yes, that was what our proposal was from I don't know when we first decided to do this, but from very early in the process, let me put it that way. The time's just flown by, the 14 years.
I just don't think it was adequately described in the condition, so.
I think you're right. I think it fell out of it fell out of the project description because the EIR picked it up, so somehow it fell out. Unintentionally.
Thank you. Anything else?
So Commissioner
Mr.
Cooney, can
Zoni.
you hear me now?
No, with Ms. Petrovich's correction, that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we're back to you, Commissioner Blau.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
No, it's very, very weak.
All right, let me
Maybe
try
there's
one more
something
time.
can be done up there.
How about now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, I think we got it fixed. Yeah, I'm prepared to go forward and approve this project. It strikes me that the one thing I heard that I don't understand at all is this issue of where, in order for me to be a farmer, I have to buy a 4,000 acre parcel. I can't buy one for 200 or 300 or 4 acres and be a farmer. I'm thoroughly convinced that this project is going to be farmed. I can't imagine the economics of it not being farmed. As far as the concern about the egg contract, I understand now better than I used to why certain egg operations it's not beneficial to put it in an egg contract because you don't actually receive the tax benefit that you think you might get. I also have a difficulty in even trying to force someone into an egg contract If they want to pay a higher rate of income, property taxes, God bless them. But, and it's not something I think can actually legislate. The ag contract is there for you if you could benefit by it, and there's trade-offs, but if you can't benefit by it, then you probably shouldn't do it. So curious to hear what the commissioners want to weigh in on before I actually make a motion.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to Commissioner Brooks for the 3rd District input.
Okay, thank you. Before I start, with my comments, I don't know if there'll be any questions, from these, but if we're in deliberations, I do want to thank Ms. Petrovich and Ms. Belgerina for a very thorough site visit that we had before the rains came. I think Commissioner Cooney probably saw it in the height or the beginning of the rains, and I'm very glad we've had the rains, for the agricultural operations there. I first heard about Rancho La Laguna probably slightly before I came on the Planning Commission in 2009, and for me already, Rancho La Laguna had this mythic status. I saw part of it as I was doing a site visit for a mining operation. I think we referred to it when we did our site visit. It's up adjacent. I don't know where on the map it is, but and I almost felt humbled because here I am on Rancho La Laguna, because it's one of the original ranchos. It's a little bit, it's left of, I believe, about a 20,000 acre original rancho. I guess another reason why I had heard about it was because the owners had taken it out of Williamson Act. And, my burgeoning interest and growing knowledge about land use matters, I early on, have had a respect, for anyone, who goes into the Williamson Act, whether it's for financial reasons or, just to protect the land. It takes 10 years. It's a long, grueling process. Once you go in, you are making that commitment, because then it takes 10 years, to remove the land, from Williamson. And then December of last year, here we are. The land is not, is no longer in Williamson. That being said, I think when I was out on the property, and then in January's hearing, I was leaning, maybe even leaning toward that alternative 3. But again, it was repeated, that doesn't help, with the objectives for the applicant, to achieve these 13 parcels. When I received the map from, I think this is when things started changing for me, when I received the map from staff, and I really appreciate getting that. And we did have this color map of the adjacent parcels for the March meeting, which was postponed, continued to today. And I've been looking at this map, for many weeks. And as I look at some of the parcels, and the other thing about Rancho La Laguna, it's very remote. I consider it, when I drove to it, it took me over an hour to get there. It's Santa Barbara County, if it's Los Alamos or San Ynez, it is in a very remote area and a very remote, agricultural area. And then as I looked at the different parcel, the term came today, and I haven't used it before, the parcelization, of some of the larger lots, you see it here, on this map. When we look at the surrounding parcels, you have some that are 6,000, 4,000, 5,000, 3,000, 2,000. And then you have, there's one there, 15. There's another area, where we have like some 40 acres. And it seemed to me, as I'm thinking about agriculture and, the preservation of agriculture and even the improvement of agriculture. I'm looking at that map thinking, I don't know, why was that done? You know, why do we have a 12-acre, you know, and for whatever reasons in the past it was done. You know, I come back to Rancho La Laguna, and I'm at this point thinking, you know, I cannot support the project. I think the idea that it came out of Williamson, whether it was the current owner or the prior owner, that really made me worry about, you know, ag viability. Of course, the 13 lots that are here are quite large. You know, according to the point system, it can be continued. But then I worry about some, we just discussed the parcels that would be, you know, suggested to go back, you know, into Williamson. But there's some very, very prime, I don't know in the point system if they're prime, but there's active agriculture going on in some of those other parcels. I think in one of the letters that we received, you know, they talk about where there is active agriculture right now, and some of those are not proposed to go back into Williamson. Yes, they are eligible, and yes, future landowners, you know, could consider, you know, putting them in. But it worries me because, you know, right now I'm thinking if we had, I had guess over the years hoped that, you know, the whole parcel of the 4,000 acres, you know, would be put back into Williamson. But now we're looking at, you know, again, parcelization of it, and I'm just wondering, I'm not feeling that, okay, this is definitely going to happen. When I did my site visit, and I was really very pleased today to hear that, you know, the current owners have really brought, they've tried to bring back agriculture and, you know, a viable agricultural operation, you know, to Rancho La Laguna. But then if you look out of the 4,000 acres, you know, we have, you know, 500 in crops right now. I don't know what the future would bring. You know, perhaps it would be more, perhaps it would be less. You know, we don't know. I did not see on my site visit, and again, it could have been, there had been a rain. You know, some of the areas in the back where some grazing goes on, I didn't see it. One thing I was very concerned about with some of the parcels, I call it the back of the area, but it's kind of in the steep slope area. And looking at the development envelopes that are designated right now, and I believe, you know, there'd be quite a bit of cut and fill to put a driveway, you know, up into some of those parcels. And that's probably why previously I was thinking, well, maybe alternative 3 would work.